Would like to talk a little bit about an issue that has been on a lot of people's radar recently, and that is the use of backing tracks. There has been a lot of controversy about bands that charge ridiculously high ticket prices doing shows that are largely recorded. And if you're a fan of live music, what you go to a show for a lot of times is that live element, the fact that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be a little off. It's going to be a little different than the CD, maybe. And I think there's an argument to be made that it's not always bad. Like there's a lot of bands that need kind of, especially as someone who knows what it's like to be working on a budget. If you're a band like Cradle of Filth, for example, and not that they're working on a budget, I think they're very well established and probably can afford to take a symphony on tour with them if they need to, or a violin section or whatever. But I think if you have that kind of depth to your music and you need to tour behind it, the backing track thing is like the best option. And it gives you the opportunity to kind of add that depth to your live show. Well, but the rest of your instruments are live. You know, they're playing on top of the symphonic tracks, or they have a keyboard player triggering it or whatever. It gets a little dicey though with a lot of these, like I've seen rap artists that literally just put their CD on and rap over the top of their full CD with vocals and everything. I'll even give you props if you rap over an instrumental beat with no voices or just backing voices. Just the accents. But so I've seen so many guys, even Eminem, I've even seen early footage of Eminem playing back in the day where he's literally just rapping over his own CD with the vocals on it. And that's like karaoke. It's bad. It's terrible. So this is a debate, I think, that's worth addressing. And I'm saying that there's nuance to it. But one of the people who's focused quite a bit on it is Eddie Trunk. And I saw this clip of Blackie Lawless from WASP talking to Eddie Trunk about why he uses backing tracks. And I thought, you know what, that's a rational explanation. So listen.
About, because me as a rock fan, it's something that I'm not down with, but I got to bring it up to you, just being honest. One of the things that came out of those shows of people seeing you in America for the first time in a while, there was more than one person that called into this show, said, hey, something's going on with the vocal here. Is Blackie actually really singing? And then there was a clip that was surfaced online in a meet and greet where you admitted to singing to a track. Can you provide some clarity as to exactly what is and isn't live in a WASP show and your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. When we do these, well, let me back up a little bit. About 10, 12 years ago, we did the Crimson Idol the first time in its entirety with orchestration. Now, prior to that, we had just done, I call it the Live at Leeds version, because if you look at what the Who did with the Live at Leeds, which we all thought was live at the time, and we now realize there are overdubs on those as well, like most live records, we would take the bare bones approach to doing it. Well, we decided to take, an approach where we tried to make it sound exactly like the record. And we had never used orchestration or anything like that. So we went in the studio, we took all the tracks off the record as far as the orchestration. We took the background vocal tracks, we took doubles on leads, we did everything. And we took it and we tried to make it sound as much like the record as we could. I stood in the middle of the room that first night in rehearsal, and I swear to you, it was like an out-of-body experience. I had never heard anything sound like that before. I'd never played with a live orchestra before. And so this was the closest thing you would get to doing something like that. And so I came to the conclusion, because, listen, I understand both sides of the argument on it. I don't, for me personally, when I'm up there, I'm singing my ass off. But what's wrong with having enhancement to make something sound exactly like the record? Because, you're not going to get a band like Queen or any other band that does big productions like that. 4 guys cannot go out there and reproduce that record. It's impossible. It won't happen.
Yeah. So that's the point that I was kind of making earlier, that I think in some respects, I understand the backing tracks, but are you actually singing and playing? Because I've seen artists where I'm like, there's no way you're actually singing. You're like, when a show first starts, if it's truly live, it takes the band a little bit to adapt to the sound. Usually they're going to be a little flat at parts. There's going to be notes that they can't hit sometimes. There's going to be flubs here and there, which are expected in a live show. It's not going to be flawless. I didn't go to a live show to hear the CD, but let's keep listening.
So do you want it to sound like the record, or do you want it to be just a general live performance?
And that is what I just said. I don't go to hear the record. I want the live element, but I also, understanding what he just said, 4 guys aren't going to be able to replicate an entire symphony sound. So sometimes there is warrant for this.
And that's a question of taste. So if you're going to start making records where you have a lot of orchestration and things like that going, it is impossible to make it sound like that record unless you have that. And you could also make the argument, which has been going on Broadway for the last 20 years. The Musicians Union has been fighting this fiercely, but technology rolls on and it's not going to stop. Where they no longer have live music in Broadway productions. And the Musicians Union has had a fit over that. Well, even before that happened, when you had keyboards introduced that had entire, orchestras in them, you got one guy now replacing 120 different people. So where do you draw the line? Well, like I said, I understand if
that's an interesting point that I was unaware of about the musicians for Broadway, because now they're using tracks instead of live music at Broadway shows because it's expensive to pay a bunch of musicians, and there's definitely a debate to be had there. I don't. I'm a musician myself, so how do you make a living if you're a trained violinist or a trained, horn player or a trained musician, and these types of opportunities are disappearing? How do you make a living anymore? But I'm optimistic in that I think that there's definitely a lot more love for live music. Like I was saying earlier with the AI thing, it's kind of like, the more music goes in that direction where it's processed and fake, the more of the backlash people are going to have towards the more organic, soulful, original music that's played on instruments and isn't just all computers.